Good evening, gentlemen. We're going to be doing the alternator on the 850R tonight. I got an alternator from the junkyard. I had to get two of them. This is the second one I got. The first one I took to the auto parts store and had them do the free test on it, and it failed. And I went back to the junkyard. This is you pull and pay. And they let me swap it out for another one. So we got another one out of the Volvo 850. This is a remanufactured alternator. The car had about 111,000 miles on it. So the one in my car has shit the bricks, and we're going to be replacing it with the junkyard edition. I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to test your alternator while it's in the car. You can use a multimeter. They give them away for free at Harbor Freight sometimes. They're really cheap and easy to use. So I'll show you how to test your alternator, and I'm going to show you how to replace the alternator here in the 850. First thing you're going to want to do, obviously, is disconnect the battery. You don't want to be having any sparks going off because you're going to be playing with the positive and negative leads there on the back of the alternator. So you're going to disconnect the battery. Then you're going to want to get this ECU cover and the vent hose out of the way. I already removed the vent hose here, and unsnap this ECU cover, and then you're going to want to take this top hose for the coolant off. I'm going to switch over to the GoPro here and start shooting with that. Okay, so I'll show you how to remove the serpentine belt here. I'm going to access this tensioner without the special tool. It's got like a small pry bar here from Home Depot or wherever it's about 1 inch wide. It fits right in this little tensioner here. It's square shaped, so you got like two options how you can put it in there. You go like that and lock it in, and then I put a little piece of pipe on the end of the pry bar. Like this. And push towards the front of the vehicle. Just going to loosen the belt. You can take it off fully. I'm going to be replacing this belt because it was dry rotted and due for exchange anyway. Let go of the tensioner easy, it's going to want to snap back. Alright, serpentine belt's off. Alright, so I already got the top hose off the off the radiator here. And I'm going to leave the gooseneck on. And there's a bolt that's underneath the gooseneck right here. It's kind of hard to get to. But I am able to get to it without having to take this off. I just don't want to disturb anything in here if I don't have to. So you got to remove this bolt. And then this one down here. And that one there. And then on this side, let's bring the light over here. You got to remove this one here. And then you have to work through the holes of the pump here, or the pulley, and there's like 3 or 4 bolts behind this pulley you got to pull out. And then this one here, and then you'll be able to get the power steering off. You're going to leave all the lines attached to it and just pull the power steering up out of the way like that. And then you can get down to the final couple bolts that are going to hold the alternator on. Alright, so I got all the bolts out of the power steering pump here. I'm ready to lift that up out of the way. You want to get a piece of tight wire or something and lay it out of the way. Then you can get down in there to your alternator. And there's 3 more bolts, and your alternator will be free to go. Need to get the towel here. We're finally ready to remove it. Alright. See ya. Check the brushes in that thing, they're probably toast. Got the new junkyard right here on standby. I'm gonna wipe up the engine bay a little bit, and I have a dipstick oil leak I need to take care of down there. I'm gonna do it now while I have this stuff out, and then we're gonna reinstall. Okay, so I have my old alternator on my fancy new workbench here. Got some garage improvements made. Made it so that I could actually pull the car all the way in and close the doors. So, got my toolbox rolled out here, and a little cabinet, another workbench. Anyways, got the old alternator on the bench here, and right away I noticed there's like some nasty crud and shit like around the, I don't know, around the copper thing. This alternator is definitely fucked up. I'll take these brushes out. They're probably going to be gone. And then this looks like a much cheaper voltage regulator than the one that's in that alternator. I already pulled that out and checked it out. It has a Bosch voltage regulator in there, and the brushes have decent length to them. So we'll pull this voltage regulator off and see how beat up these brushes are, just for gits and shiggles. Okay, yeah, so these brushes are pretty pathetic. And this center spindle here is like extremely stepped. For reference, these two areas here and here were originally flush with the outside of the ring, and it's actually worn that far down in there in the stepped areas. So this is actually supposed to be flat, and this is what you would call extreme wear on the center shaft. So this alternator is no good. When I opened this one up, the center shaft is like brand new looking. It's still flush across there, and the brushes are still pretty good. Even the pulley still has new paint on it. So I'm gonna install that one here after we clean up the bay. Okay, so I removed the dipstick tube out of there. I'm also gonna include a video of it leaking. But basically, I have a an IPD phenolic intake spacer. It's one of those plastic spacers. And it takes the intake manifold and moves it out away from the block about a ½ inch. And it also moves the dipstick and a couple of the other things. And it gives you different mounting brackets, but you need to kind of bend this mounting tab on the dipstick tube, which I didn't do. So basically what all that means is it doesn't keep this tube pushed all the way down into the block, and my O-ring had like this cocked angle to it like that, and it was allowing it to leak. So I bent this little bracket up so that it pushes down on this more, and it's going to keep that push down into the little hole where it's supposed to go. Let me see if I can get a shot of that hole. I don't know. Yeah, it's down in there. Way down in there. Whatever. Alright, so we're going to put the dipstick tube back in. I got my little heater down there chooching away. El Diablo XL Junior chooching. Settings on there. Sun. Chernobyl. Okay, so I got everything degreased, and I got the used alternator, replacement alternator installed in there, and I'm just pretty much going to work my way from the bottom of the alternator up, putting all the bolts in and tightening them, because it's hard to get to the ones on the bottom before you start installing everything. So there's one on the very bottom I got stuck in there, and it's just kind of hand tight. I'm going to tighten that bottom one first, and then come up and do this one in the bracket and add the rest of the tensioner and stuff on there piece by piece. Then we'll flop the power steering pump, mount that back up, and I got a brand new Serpentine belt here that I got from IPD. It's just a Continental, regular old belt, so throw a new Serpentine on there, and then we'll go for a ride. Alright, so I finished up the alternator install. And as I was putting the power steering pump and stuff back on, I noticed that they got this metal plate, and I was almost going to leave it out because it really doesn't seem to serve a purpose. It just bolts on here, and then a couple more bolts down there. But it's just this separate plate that covers the front of this tank, and it really doesn't have anything to do with how the pump is mounted. And I was thinking about it, and I guess they must have been testing the car, and something must have passed under the hood here, because the hood comes right over the top of the headlight, and it's pretty much shaped like this right here. You can see it's curved like that. Something must have came under the car when they were testing it and pierced this tank, and they must have put this plate in here to keep some road debris from piercing this reservoir. That's the only reason I could think of it being there, because it doesn't have anything to do with the way the pump is attached to the engine. But either way, we got the alternator installed and everything. New serpentine belt on there. It's all tightened up. I topped it off with coolant. I'm getting ready to start it up here.